Welcome, everybody, to the R&R Catcast, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back, Bobcat fans. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the R&R Catcast. This is our instant reaction show where we break down the game that just had. We go around the big sky, and then we give kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly. But most importantly, the illustrious return of Ryan Thornburg. How you doing, buddy?
Doing fantastic, man. I'm back. I'm back stateside. I'm not quite fully acclimated to the time zone just yet. I passed out pretty early last night because I'm used to being 8 hours ahead of where I am, but it's good. I was able to watch the game, get some Bobcat football back in my life. Feels good, man. It feels good to be back on the mic.
Right on. Well, happy to see your bearded face again and hear you talking in the background. So very first thing we're going to do, we'll dive into the scores around the big sky. I know you have a short time that you can devote to this, so we're going to get in and get out. Plus, this game against Stetson was, well, is what we thought it would be, and so we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's start off with, I'll start us off on the top, as I like to do. Northern Colorado lost to the Cougs, the 23rd ranked Washington State Cougars. 64-21. And I guess if there's a little bit of surprise, it's the fact that Northern Colorado hung 21 points on Washington State. I watched a little bit of that game. I'm not too familiar with who's their stars anymore outside of Cameron Ward, their quarterback. So I couldn't tell you if Washington was playing like their third stringers, but there it is. Colorado 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, right? So I'm looking at it. The Cougs scored 43 in the first half, and Northern Colorado scored 7, and then it was 21-14 in the second half. Cougs. So imagine a lot of second stringers involved. But that's about what that game expected to. The other game that was kind of interesting that at the top of my list here is Weber State. Mm-hmm. Hung with Utah a little bit. It was a 17-7 Utes at halftime, and then Utah scored twice in the third quarter, and it was nobody scored in the fourth quarter. So Weber State manages just 7 points, but holds Utah to respectable 31 points. Weber State looked pretty tough in that, man. They looked physical. They were hitting hard. They wanted that game. They were there to show that they're another Utah school that can play some football, but ultimately they fell short. But I was kind of impressed with Weber State.
Yeah, they look big as always. Utah's missing their starting quarterback, and that was kind of the narrative that the announcers...
Rising, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, they're like, well, this offense still hasn't found their footing against anybody or the semblance of kind of continuity. But I think Weber State had a lot to do with that. It looks like Utah kind of ran away with that in the third quarter once they kind of figured things out. But it's a tough one coming up. We're going to talk a lot of Weber State tomorrow night.
Yeah. Yep, that's going to be the biggest game of the season by far so far. Well, no, South Dakota State. What am I talking about? I'm all sorts of weirded out, man. Like I didn't get to watch very much Bobcat football, and it's kind of an afterthought when I was in Europe for 2 weeks. So sorry about that. That was a bag of snafu. Obviously, we just had a huge game 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe when we have some more time, probably on Monday, let's catch up on some South Dakota State thoughts because I'm interested to see what you thought. All right, hey, one game I was actually kind of happy about was Idaho losing to Cal. And I say that not because I'm rooting against Idaho. I'm just rooting against the obnoxious fans that Idaho has. And they lost 17-31. They were up 17-0 against Cal. And then a little guy named Isaiah Fonse just had a quiet day of 137 yards, 22 carries with 1 touchdown. Good to see California knock off Idaho, in my opinion. I think Cal would not even be a top 10 FCS school. I'm probably going to need Crow on this, but that's how I feel.
Yep, hard to say, but yeah, good showing by Idaho. I'm surprised they let that one get away. 17-0, and then giving up 31 straight points and getting shut out in the second half. So something went sideways for the Vandals there, or they caught Cal sleeping a little bit in the first half. But Idaho looking like a strong team this year. I was on the fence on them earlier in the year. On our preview episode, I think I had them finishing like 7-4, but I had them losing both their FBS games. But they're looking like they're a top 10, top 5 FCS squad at the moment.
I have to make an apology because if Mr. Krotzer actually listens to this podcast, a guy I work with, he's a gem of a guy, and his son plays for Idaho. He is not an obnoxious Idaho fan. He's a really awesome dude. Mr. Krotzer,
Okay.
that's not
Good
directed at
qualifier
you.
there.
Sorry. All right, going down the list.
All right.
This one was surprising. Utah Tech hung it on Northern Arizona 50-36. Yeah, the same Utah Tech that we blasted week 1. So Northern Arizona, house is crumbling over there. This could be the beginning of the end for who's their coach? Is it Chris Ball? Is that right?
Chris
Something like
Ball,
that.
the guy that the Bobcats came a hair away from hiring.
Yeah, that's not a good loss for Northern Arizona. They dropped to 0-3. This is bad. And it was in Flagstaff, so no excuses,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No, that's supposed to be the tough place to play. And they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. So they were down like 47-15 or something like that. They were getting smoked by Utah Tech.
Yeah, it looks like
I
Utah
think
Tech
NA's
pulled.
gonna be worse than I thought they were, which is
Yeah.
saying something.
Mhm.
Well, Eastern takes care of business at home against Southeast Louisiana, 40-29. Good win for the Eagles, even though it was at home. They were struggling with a lot of that game, but 20 points in the fourth quarter. They came out on top. A lot of people had Sela in the top 20, even though they're 0-3. I think 2 of those were like FBS losses or something. But yeah, they're 0-3. It's hard to justify keeping anybody in the top 25, no matter who they play if they're 0-3. But good win for the Eagles, man. They're kind of back in the win column. They got a brutal first 5 or 6 games, or whatever. So good for them to get on the right side of the winning column.
I watched a little bit of that game. Those two teams seem evenly matched to me. So that was a really good matchup. That was a fun game to watch.
Isn't Sela the team that beat Idaho in the playoffs last year?
Correct. Oh my gosh, Portland
Well,
State.
next one's a fun one.
I don't even know who they played. North America. It doesn't even say. They don't even have like an insignia. It's just Portland State 91-0. I didn't even want to click on it because at one point I saw there was like an insane amount of personal foul calls. That just sucks. When you have a score like that in football, it just sucks.
Yeah. I mean, not much to say about this one. They didn't even score in the fourth quarter, so they scored 91 points in 3 quarters. I mean,
Gosh,
I don't know.
that's weird.
No FCS school of any kind, non-scholarship, partial scholarship, whatever, has any business scheduling a school like North American University. I think I heard they're in brand new NAIA school.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they just started their football program, but that's just no business scheduling that. And I think they play another Big Sky team too.
Do they?
Remember when we
That's
did the
crazy.
schedule breakdown? I'm pretty sure I saw this North American University on there twice. But whatever. Let's move on. We got a lot of games to cover here. Northern Iowa goes to Pocatello.
Thorny.
Pocatello. Yeah.
Just real quick, this is really rare because Zach and I covered it last week. There was another game. Portland State had 42 points in the second quarter against this team. That's the second week in a row. Some team had 42 points alone in the second quarter. It wasn't Portland State last week. I can't remember who it was, but that's just, I didn't know you could score that many points in one quarter of football.
That's like, yeah, you're scoring like special teams, defensive touchdowns. Like you got to be scoring at all 3 phases right there. Sorry, man. This is lagging really badly. Sorry. Good to be back. I don't know if my computer hasn't been updated in a month, but some lags.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll cover it.
We'll get back on it. All right. Back to Northern Iowa, 41-17. After last week, Northern Iowa got handled by Weber. Weber State went to Cedar Rapids. Is that where Northern Iowa is? Took care of business there, but UNI comes to Idaho State, beats the winless Idaho State, who fell to 0-3 with Cody Hawkins' debut down there. So it's going to be a long season for Idaho State. Northern Iowa, always a solid squad. Apparently, it's Mark Farley's 175th career win, the coach at Northern Iowa, who's been there for forever.
Idaho State might actually do something, though, this year. I watched a little bit of that game, and they are just committed to slinging the ball all around with reckless abandon, and it's going to catch someone off guard. They're going to have a game where they just light someone up. So I think Idaho State's actually has an identity as like a dome team that's committed to like passing the ball. So right now they're just trying to outscore everybody. They don't have a semblance of a running game. They're just slinging it. And I think once they figure it out, they could chalk up a couple surprise wins.
They could. You never know.
Yeah. All right. One that I kind of thought was going to happen. Sac State went into Stanford and won. That's not a big surprise to me, given that Stanford's just kind of a mess with Troy Taylor over there, and Stanford's just kind of, I don't know, they're just lost right now because they don't really have a conference, and so Sac State put it on them, 30-23, and Sac State's looking still kind of a mystery to me, to be honest with you, on what to think about Sac State. But good on them, 30-23. That's a solid win. Anytime you can knock off a FBS team, that's a solid win.
Well, Power 5 team. I don't care if it's a Stanford, a hapless team that never seems to be good. That's a big time game, a big time win for Sac State, and I think it just solidifies. There's not a big drop off yet from Troy Taylor.
No,
Like some people thought. Everyone thought maybe Troy Taylor was the only reason that Sac State was winning. Well, here they are 3-0 with the Power 5 win under their belt.
I bet you Troy Taylor was wishing he had some of those Sac State players.
Probably, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Cal Poly beat Lincoln College from Lincoln, California, or somewhere like that. They're 0-4, but Cal Poly moves to 41-20. Sam Heward had 325 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's a good game for Sam Heward, but they just took care of business. Not too much to say about Cal Poly. Now they actually have to play someone. I think they played two pretty low teams where they got the wins, but now they're going to go on to the Big Sky Conference games. So we'll see what happens with Sam Heward and the Mustangs.
I think they were losing 20-7 at one point.
Yeah, they were.
So, a rough start.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you want to save the Grizz for last? You want to do the Grizz now?
Let's save them for last, I suppose. So
right.
Bump down to that final one.
UC Davis squeaks by Southern Utah, man, 23-21. Close game. 24 points scored between the two teams in the fourth quarter. I did not get to watch any of this game, but Davis squeaks by Southern Utah, who's 0-3. Davis moves to 2-1, and not a good win for UC Davis, but a win's a win. It's early in the season, as we've talked about many times. How you play early in the season doesn't necessarily mean how you play later in the season. So good, you got to keep winning. That's all that really matters at this point.
Yeah, and they have a favorable schedule. We'll see how they end up. All right, the game we probably all watched because it was a different time slot was Montana taking on Division II Ferris State. They won 17-10. And I'll just say this about Ferris State. They did not look like a Division II team. They were stacked on the line, a bunch of 300-pound guys on the fronts. They looked like a Big Sky team, actually. And their talent players, their quarterback play, they were a very talented team. The Grizzlies had their special, I don't know what they called, anthracite game, or I don't know, sure. It's just some sort of black uniform. My cat just jumped up here. Hey, there's Marley. Hey, Marley.
Anyways, get some sniffs and rubs on the microphone there.
Yeah, it's live.
This is a no-edit podcast here, so if the cat purrs in the mic, it's staying.
Okay, I'm going to put you down there. But yeah, the Washington Grizzly Stadium, they won that game. I thought the crowd had definitely a hand in that win because they easily accounted for, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 different false starts from what I saw. But good win for the Grizzlies because that would have been a bad loss, just given the defense or D2 nature.
Yeah, good win only because it wasn't a loss. I mean, yes, Ferris State, very good Division II team, would probably be a top 25 FCS team, quite likely. But, you still got to be able to win that game a little bit better. Grizz just did not look cohesive. They did not look real dangerous offensively. Defensively, they looked pretty good. Ferris State was able to move the ball a little bit. Some of the stuff they did there, I'm like, oh, the Cats do that kind of stuff. So you're sitting there watching it from the angle of how the Cats could take advantage of this. But the Grizz, no. That was a physical game. The Grizz got the win. It took a little bit of Washington Grizz magic there at the end to ensure that. But like I just said, for the Southern Utah UC Davis game, a win's a win in the end. You can't lose that game. Maybe a voter or two knocks you down because of the loss, but in the end, in the grand scheme, the playoff committee, I'm not sure it matters. Division II are kind of non-qualifiers anyway, but a Division II loss will kill you.
Yeah, this is just a weird game to put on your schedule because it doesn't help you with the playoff rankings. I'm not sure. Yeah, they only had like less than 200 yards of offense. Again, I think you're right, Thorny. I just don't think they use their weapons. It's weird. I don't want to get too much Grizzly talk, but you have a guy like Junior Bergen, and that guy has probably like under 10 targets this year so far. It's just weird. So I
Yep.
don't know.
No,
Alrighty.
hopefully they don't figure it out.
Yeah, right.
It wouldn't break my heart if they never get it together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's around the big sky. We do want to introduce a new segment. You said, what was it?
I don't know,
Chasing the
just
Champs?
chasing the champs, FCS games of note, whatever. But it'd be nice to kind of keep track of South Dakota State since their opponent we played earlier in the season and obviously in the quarter or semifinals last year. They plastered Drake. Another, we're familiar with Drake. But if you're not familiar with Drake as a Cat fan, you must be pretty new or something. But 70-7, 14-7 in the first quarter. But then it was just all jacks, and they kept their starters in Mount Gronowski and the Yankee players. I don't know if the other one's healthy or not, but they were still scoring touchdowns with like 8 minutes left in the third quarter. So obviously shaking off some cobwebs, trying to get the offense sorted after maybe struggling a little bit against the Cats. But big win, 77. I mean, I'm sure there's not much complaints out of Brookings.
No. You just got to keep track of those guys. Unfortunately, our loss means we probably, if we get to that point, the semifinals, we'll have to be traveling again. Well, it depends on what side we're on, right? Who knows? But
Yeah.
well, we could talk about that when we get there.
We got a lot of games to win before we have that conversation.
Yeah. And there's some tough ones, including the upcoming one against
Very
Weber.
tough.
I mean, Montana State could find themselves in a hole early on that I don't know. Don't want to go down that route right now, but let's quickly talk about the Stetson game. Somebody on the board mentioned it, and I thought they put it perfectly. There's like, I'm a huge Bobcat fan, and this was one of the hardest games for me to keep engaged. I was like, yes, like I wanted this game to be done after the first quarter, and it felt like it was. I just wanted to get out there because the fans. This will be one of my first thing I would say on the good. The initial crowd was amazing, and that was one thing I was going to worry about. I was like, Stetson, all the way from Florida. Who are these guys, right? So
After a heartbreaking loss, too. Like, you never know if a fan just doesn't want to do it. They know they're going to win, whatever. Just skip it. But
yeah, the fans showed up
to start.
But they also found the tailgating pretty enticing after the first quarter. There was no need to come back after that. But Montana State, it looked like a Chamber of Commerce type day. Zach Levere kept texting me. He's like, man, this is one of the most beautiful days out. I was like, yes, it looks awesome. That was good. We beat them really well. It was awesome. So, what's your good, Thorny? Tell me about it.
So I liked the game plan. I liked coming out and working on the passing game. I can say more about the passing game and exactly how that transpired and exactly how we attacked it. But we came out throwing the ball. I think what was our first 4 or 5 straight plays were all passing plays. So that's what we needed to work on. We've talked about that, especially Chambers. I think because I think Tommy is looking pretty decent passing the ball this year. Chambers, when he came in, didn't look super awesome against the Jackrabbits. So to see him come out and spin the ball around, get taken out at halftime with 6 for 9 for 140 yards or something in the first half, and that was the end of the day for Sean Chambers. I like to see him be in command and have a good bounce back game after. I wouldn't say it's a bounce back game because he didn't play bad against South Dakota State, so that's the wrong phrase. But good to see him come out and play well and kind of get things going.
Yeah, we saw this last year. I think at the beginning of UC Davis when he was inserted after Tommy went out at Eastern Washington. And we kind of fell in love with the Sean Chambers offense because it just felt more dynamic. Because clearly he's a better passer. Or maybe not a better passer. I don't know.
He throws a better looking ball. It's pretty.
Yeah. He can do more passing routes, I feel, than Tommy can or could at that moment. And that's exactly what we needed for him to come out passing like he did. And that was what Tom Stuber was saying. He's like, we need to come out and just, pass as much as we possibly can to figure out if we can do it. And we did. So happy about that.
If you're at the stage in your program where you know who you are and you're kind of a well-oiled machine in certain areas, these are the games you're supposed to work on the parts of the machine that aren't working very well. And that's what you should do. Like, this should have been an opportunity to work on the passing game, and that's exactly what we did. So good on the coaches that's my good category. knowing that that's a weakness that we should work on, and perfect time to do it because we got a big game coming up next week.
Yep. A couple other things I'll just rattle off. In the good was I thought that our play calling in the red zone was a little bit more diversified and
Yes.
just looked better. I mean, it's hard not to be more diversified than what we had against South Dakota State. That's such a head scratcher. Kotzman, I mean, or field goals. Casey Kotzman out of Butte had 44-yard and 36-yard. I know he was playing in like mop up duty, but I thought just his rhythm and his approach to the ball to me actually looks a little bit better than Brendan Hall. As I love Brendan Hall booting out of the end zone, but when plays kicking duties, I kind of actually have a little bit more confidence in Kotzman. I like the Ort pick six. That's just good to see a pick six anytime you get one. And probably my other favorite thing was came in right away. We had a safety blitz from Drew Polidor, and I hadn't seen that look yet. And that was a really good time blitz on just a different front. I hadn't seen that formation yet. And that I just, the way we continue to use and showcase Drew Polidor is really awesome.
Yep, I agree. And the good, yeah, just getting pressure on the quarterback. I don't know how many sacks we ended up with, but I think both the interceptions were because the quarterback was like getting hit right as he was throwing it or was about to get hit. So I think both the interceptions that we had, one by, like you said, Rylan Ort, and then the other one by Blake Stillwell, were both caused by good pressure by the front four. So that's in the good category. They didn't dominate necessarily, but they played pretty well and they got themselves out in the third quarter. So we got to see a lot of backups, which is huge, hugely important in the course of a season to get every player on the roster some playing time.
Absolutely. Love to see that. Okay, in the okay category for the me, I thought our tackling was just okay. I thought we rallied to the ball really well, but the initial tackles, we could be a little bit more sharp at that.
No, kind of looked like the classic case of just trying to level a guy and not necessarily tackle a guy.
I kept thinking it was probably hard for our players to keep engaged with this game as well. If as a fan we felt it, but it's such a high and then coming down with such a low, and then with Weber in the forefront, I don't know. It was a tough game for us to just be as sharp as we need to
Yeah,
be. We
especially
didn't
in the
need to
second
be.
half.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like you just didn't need to have your A game, but
Mm.
you always want to have your A game. It's just a weird game in that.
I mean, it wasn't this long ago that we were winning these games like 35-10 and keeping the starters in until like the fourth quarter because
Yeah.
it wasn't like quite put away yet. So I'll take this any day of the week. It's a sloppy second half, but you're getting lots of guys in, and it's in between two hugely important games. So it is what it is. I'm not concerned about any of the second half crap, really.
No, no, not me either. And I guess the only thing I had in the bad category was we missed a point after. And again, Brendan Hall just seems to be inconsistent. He either nails it or it goes off to the right or knuckles. He has some inconsistencies there. And then special teams tackling. Well, the one time we didn't put it in as a touchback, they had a big return that set them up for one of their touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree with that. Special teams was kind of a adventure. Bad, I guess. Some drops. Some drops, I think, mainly by Jacob Trimble. I'm not sure anyone else had a drop. Maybe Cleveland Thomas might have had a drop too, or had one he should have come down with. I don't remember. But I mean, if we're going to be a team that doesn't pass the ball a lot, but is going to need the passing game to help us out, you can't be dropping passes that hit you wide open in the hands. You just can't.
No. Yeah, Trimble had a fumble actually too that caused us that led to one of their touchdowns. So he did good, but he's such a young receiver. He's a true freshman. But yeah, you can't put the
Yeah,
ball on the
you
deck
were
when you're in
texting
the
me
five.
that you were like getting frustrated a little bit with Trimble or whatever, but in some ways, like I totally see that. But he got himself open. That's not a lot of Bobcat wide receivers in the last few years can say they can get themselves open. So he's got a high upside. He's a freshman. He'll figure some of this stuff out, but he still ended up with 6 catches for 104 yards. He's got some moves. He's fast. He's decent size at 6 foot. You got to work on holding on to the ball because he had a decent drop against South Dakota State too. Now,
Yeah,
somebody said that the defender, put his hand in there and may have poked it out the last second. It looked to me on the cursory glance I watched like he should have come down with that, but he's getting himself open. Like even in that one, he beat his man in South Dakota State and got himself open in a perfect pass from Chambers. So I think he's got a big upside. So he's going to have to be because who knows what's happening with the the two FBS guys, Lanyata, Junior Alexander, and McCullough. They're going to play.
I
I
think
know.
they will.
I know one's
McCullough's an
injured,
injury
but yeah.
thing, and who knows about the eligibility thing? That's just weird to me. I don't know. So, all right. Hey, Thorny, any other thoughts?
No, man, I got to get rolling here. It feels good to be back, man. This is I wish I came back for a more exciting game to talk about, but Monday we'll have an exciting game to look forward to. And I'll give you a little bit of maybe recap of what I thought about South Dakota State if we want to continue that conversation, because that's probably more interesting than the Stetson game, which we probably have already said enough. We can talk a little bit more on Monday, but good to be back. Anything else you want to say here before we get out?
No, man. I'm good.
All right. Well, let's just get out of here with a nice, simple go Cats.
Go Cats.